So yesterday, a lot of the questions that you had on Muddiest Concepts were mostly inversions and positions. Welcome, Paul. It seems that with seventh chords, a lot of the same questions remain. So we will both review a lot of yesterday as well as add on dominant seventh. So we will spend some time talking about inversion of triads. Since we talked yesterday a lot about quality, we'll just review that briefly and touch a bit more on doubling, since a lot of you had questions on that. Then moving on to dominant seventh chords, we'll construct them from a root and a given key. Then we will identify them and have different ways to name them. And we will talk too about the ways to name the inversions. As I said yesterday, the figures that they use with Roman numerals, we'll discuss a more common jazz pop notation for inversions of seventh chords. And a lot of you had questions on the RL examples on the quiz. So I know those were very tricky. I won't test you in class with such complicated questions, but it's really good practice to try and listen to see if you can hear inversions. Once you start hearing, okay, that's a root position chord, but yet here's the same chord in an inversion, you can really start to hear the difference. And we can play some of those today and have fun making music. And then we will do a short melody that is made up of major and minor triads. So you have chords that happen all at once, and then you can arpeggiate them into a melody, and you can hear that as well. That can also help you hear chords. So let's try line 3 today, starting with measure 17 as a warm-up. This has a lot of fifths, some sixths, and ends with some sevenths, so that should be good practice for today. So measure 17, 1, 2, here you go. D. Okay, let's do, that was fairly good for our first time. Let's do the last line as well, since there's a lot of sevenths in there before the octaves. Through, and here you go. D. G. Started out very strong. That was good. We'll slow it down again for bass clef. Let's likewise do the third line first, measure 49. 1 and 2, and here you go. F. Let's start right there on the F. So it's a F up a sixth to a D, right? So right there, 3 and 4. F, D, yes, yes. What is this here? D, right? Because middle C is right there. So a D is just above that. So those sevenths are good to practice identifying. Or you can think of it, if you stack them in closed position, as just an added third. So we'll talk about different ways. If you're weak on identifying sevenths, try and think of it as stacked thirds. Let's do some review of counting for compound meter, preparing for your musicianship exam. Let's do 1 and clap, and here you go. Lee, 1, lolly. Forte. Yes, very good on the subdivision in measure 6. Let's do this half of the room and then this half of the room. Same thing, a tiny bit faster. Clap, and here you go. some of you there had some nice expressions. See how this half of the room can do? 1 and 2, you can clap, and here you go. Lee. Yes. Okay, good job. Let's try a new rhythm, also in compound meter. Stay with that today. So take a look at it. There's a lot of beats that are just divided into 3. But then you see 16th notes. So you remember how to subdivide all of those in a row? 1 ta la ta lita, right? And then you have these patterns that we saw a lot of. So let's try it nice and slow since it's a bit of a tongue twister. 1, 2, here we go. 1 lolly, 2 lolly, 1 lolly, 2 ta la ta lita, 1 lolly, 2 lee, 1 tolly. Good, second line. 1 ta la ta lita, 2 lolly, 1 la, 2 lolly, 1 tolly, 2 tolly, 1 lolly, 2. Really good job for sight reading that for the first time. That was very, very excellent. And a lot of you got the expressions in as well. Let's try that again. Especially good on the 1 ta. Good job. So here, clap, and here you go. 1 lolly, 2. 2 ta la ta lita. Yes. 1 ta la ta lita. 1 tolly, 2 tolly, 1 lolly, 2. Okay, good job. So, moving on to review some triads. The quality, as I said, you can think of it as a major third on the bottom and a minor third on top. You add them together, there's a perfect fifth, so you think major third with a perfect fifth. Think of it as 2/3 or a third and a fifth. Then the minor triad. Minor third on the bottom, major third on top. Augmented triad has 2 major thirds, and the diminished has 2 minor thirds. So I'll just play those so you can get them in your ear. Here's the major. Here's the minor. Augmented. And diminished. So we also talked about the parts of the triad. You have the bottom, which is the root, how it's named. Then there's the third, which is the third above the root. And then the fifth. So when you're figuring out positions, you'll need to remember the root, the third, and the fifth of the triad. Those are the different parts. So let's do just a little exercise from the homework on page 249. So go ahead and try number 2, 3, and 4. Get started on those, and then we'll review them. Hopefully by now this type of thing doesn't take too long. You start in closed position with the line, 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 or space, space, space. You just stack the thirds. With D, you have an option. You could do in this D, or you could do up here. Which one should I pick? Does it matter? If you like writing ledger lines, you could do it up higher. Then you check the quality. So for just a capital letter D, that's major, right? So you'd have the major third on the bottom. We know that D to F is what type of third naturally? Minor. So to make it a major, raise it a half step. Then you check that there's a perfect fifth, and you're set, right? G sharp, minor. I'll start space, space, space. Line, line, line. G sharp, we know that G to B is naturally a major third. So G sharp to B is a minor third, which is what we want at the bottom of a minor triad. But we also know that we have to have a perfect fifth, right? So if G to D is a perfect fifth, G sharp to D sharp, also the perfect fifth. So that would be there. Okay. A flat. This is space, 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 not line, 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 right? A flat. Put the flat. Major triad, we need a major third on the bottom, then a minor third. So A to C, minor third, A flat to C, major third. Then C up to E is a major third. We want it to be a minor third, so we'll put an E flat. And there you have major and minor triads. So questions on that? Is it easier than it was yesterday? Getting better. How many of you use the musictheory.net exercises for third practice and fifth practice? I do suggest you do that for a minute or two, just to get some thirds and fifths, major, minor, in your head before you start the homework tonight. That will help you get your juices flowing. Start thinking of, oh, major third, minor third. And as a reminder, you have the pull-out keyboard in the back of your textbook. So if you're thinking, oh, I want to check the piano, just pull it out. It's right there in the back. So that is nice. On page 250, another part of the homework, these they gave you, said here is the name of the triad, or a lot of times they gave you the tonic, the root. But this page, it gives you a different note. It gives you the third of the triad or the fifth of the triad. So you still have to construct it, starting from a different place. So let's look at, you see the arrow on the G in number 9? That's what they were given. So they had to write the rest. We'll do a few of these together. Number 10. We're given an E. It says that's the third of a triad. It's a third of an augmented triad. So if this is the third, what would the root be? E, you have to go down to a C. Or you can just say, well, go down one space. Then what would the fifth be? G. Some type of G. Then make sure the quality is correct. For an augmented triad, you have a major third and then a major third. So we can't change the given note, as usual. E down to C, it is a major third already, naturally occurring. But E up to G is a naturally occurring minor third. So what do? Sharp. Yes, very good. So that's drawing a triad given the third. Same thing with number 11. You're given a G sharp. If that's the third of a triad, what would the root be? Go down, right? That's a G. We have an E. The fifth would be right up on top. For a major triad, you want a major third and a minor third, which equal perfect fifth. We have that, so we're set. And then starting with number 17, you're given the fifth, and you have to make the rest. So they were given the G, and they said, okay, this is the fifth, here's the third, here's the root. So just working backwards a bit. For number 18, you're given an E. That's the fifth, so go down to the third. Then go down to the root. Then you make sure the quality is there, not changing the given pitch, which is the E. For a major triad, the top third is a minor third, right? So let's see, we can't change the E, but we want a minor third, C to E is usually a major third, so we'll change what we can change, the C, yes, to a C sharp. Then you check the bottom third. It is a major third, so now we have major third on the bottom, minor third on top, a perfect major triad. That make sense? Should we do one more? Here's number 19. You're given G sharp. That's the fifth of what triad? Well, we'll fill in. Major triad. So you can just look at it this way. Say, well, I know that C, E, G is a major triad. So C sharp, E sharp, G sharp would then be the major triad. And how do we write these sharps? Space them out, right? So that's that answer. Questions there? No? Okay. So as we said, the root is different than the bass. Remember that from yesterday? The bass is the lowest note, but the root is the bottom of that stacked of thirds. The bass is the lowest sounding note, and it can be different, that chord there. The root was an E, but the lowest sounding note in the bass is a G. Someone asked, does it matter what octave it is? And the answer is no. It could all be treble clef if you have a chord way up here in treble clef, and it's spaced very oddly. It's still E, G, B, and the E is the bass. No, the G is the bass and the E is the root. So E, G, B could look like that, or it could look like that. It's still an E minor triad, but in this one, that's the bass. So that will help us when we look at inversions. So if the bottom note is the root, then it's root position, right? This is on page 231 in the text. This is the labels that they give you, the little figures, as I said earlier. So the first one, the root is in the bass, so it's root position. That's a name for the inversion. And in pop jazz notation, it would just be the letter name, large case. So root position makes sense. If, in the second one, the third is in the bass, that's first inversion. So if the third is in the bass, you'd say it's a first inversion triad. And in this case, you would just say C/E because the E is the pitch that's in the bass. Then for the second inversion, when you have the fifth of the triad in the bass, that's the second inversion triad. The pop jazz notation, simply C/G. So the slash notation is a lot easier than the figures. You just have the name of the triad or the chord, /, and then whatever pitch is in the bottom, that's next. Does that make sense? Yeah? Does that clarify things a bit? Okay. There were also questions about doubling. So this is the things the book gives you. They're doubling suggestions. There's no hard and fast rule except that don't double the leading tone. Remember we talked about do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Where does T want to go? Up to do. And when you're having this type of music and voice leading, you don't want too many voices doing the same thing, too many of the parts. So if you have this tendency tone that really wants to go someplace, and you have two people doubling that, then they both want to go the same place, and it would be too much of the same thing. So you can pretty much double everything else. It's customary in root position to double the root. First inversion, pretty much anything, except for first inversion diminished triads. You would double the third. The textbook doesn't really tell you why, but that's because if you remember when you had your triads in a major key, the seventh chord, or the 7 chord, is the diminished chord. So usually that would be, the leading tone would be the root, so you wouldn't double that, because it would be the leading tone. So that's really the same rule. Just don't double the leading tone in your set. And then in second inversion triads, normally you double the fifth. So let's try this. This is on page 233. You can work by yourself or in pairs. Just take a minute or two and write these somehow. This is where you get to be creative, right? We're not just writing in closed position. We're saying, okay, put the bass note somewhere in the bass register. And then the other 3 notes, pick one to double. So you might have, in the E chord, you might have 2 G sharps, but since it's second inversion, you'll probably double the 5th, which is B. So you'll have 2 Bs, a G sharp somewhere, and an E somewhere. So that's second inversion. So you would normally, in the second inversion, double the bass, which is going to be the 5th of the chord, normally. So up here I put the customary. With a second inversion, you normally double the 5th of the chord, which will be in the bass. All right, hopefully you got at least a few of them. Now, I just wrote all E chords, E major chords, because I wanted you to hear how different ways you could do this. Since it's a second inversion triad, you would normally double, as I said, the 5th, which is the bass. So that's a B. So here's the first one. I wrote the B there, and then G sharp. So that's one way to do it. You could put the B in a higher register, make it a closed position, triad on top. You could spread that out more. You see that when I doubled the E, it has a totally different sound. And here is the last one, doubling the G sharp. I'll play them all again. Here's the first one. First one. Second. Third. Fourth. So that's why spacing and doubling matters. It takes a triad, E, G sharp, B, and makes it sound completely different with the voices arranged different ways. Does that clarify some of the spacing, voicing, and doubling questions? Okay. So these are triads. Another way to say this is tertial harmony because they're in thirds. Thirds stacked on top. But you could stack a lot of thirds on top. The triad only has 3 thirds, 3 notes, 2 thirds. But if you want to have 4 notes, 3 stacked thirds, that would be the 7th chord. And it seems that most of the questions that I got from you guys on 7th chords were still the same things, the inversions, the positions, and hearing them. So let's build on what we just reviewed. For 7th chords, the textbook gives you a couple methods, right? You could use method 2, thinking, okay, what key is the root of this 7th chord? Going to be scale degree 5. If you know keys, you have your circle of fifths handy, that's fine. I would suggest using method 1 a little bit more to say, okay, line, 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 or space, 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 space would be the root position 7th, and then figuring out the quality with the intervals. So the 7th chord is a 4-note chord, a triad with an added 7th above the root, or you could think of it as an added 3rd above the 5th. So here is a D, dominant 7th chord. You have the D major chord, and then you have another minor 3rd above the top. The root, the 3rd, the 5th, then you call this one the 7th of the chord. So you can think just a major triad, then add a minor 3rd, as I said, or you can have a major triad and add a minor 7th from the root. If you like your 7th, say, okay, here's a 7th. If you think of it as stacked thirds, there's a major 3rd, then a minor 3rd, and another minor 3rd, and that equals the dominant 7th chord. To clarify, and I may not always speak correctly, feel free to stop me, there is a 7 chord versus a 7th chord. So the 7 chord is built on scale degree 7, which in the key of C would be a B diminished chord. That's a 7 chord. The 7th chord is a 4-note chord, a triad plus a 7th. So there's a 7 chord and a 7th chord. Makes a big difference. The 7th chord is usually built on scale degree 5, so they call it the dominant 7th chord. In the key of C, with pop notation, you would say, okay, Roman numeral 5, 7. You'd speak that 5, 7. And in the key of C, since it's built on scale degree 5, C, D, E, F, G, it would be a G7 chord. That would be the pop notation. Okay? So let's work on this and practice it, writing them on page 249. It says write a dominant 7th chord above each given root, following one of the methods. So we'll think of it first just stacking thirds. And can I change the given pitch? No, as usual. Let's start number 2. Gives you an A. It says that's the root of a dominant 7th chord. So there's the root. Here's the 3rd. Here's the 5th. And here's the 7th. So now I may need to make the quality. I can't change the A, but I need a major 3rd. So how do I do that? Raise this one, C sharp. So that is the major 3rd. Then I need a minor 3rd, which it is. And I also need a minor 3rd, which it is. You can check that by saying from A to G, what type of 7th is it? And remember, if you want to flip it, you can think, okay, G to A, major 2nd equals a minor 7th. So double check that is a minor 7. So we have this dominant 7th chord. Yes? That's quality. Let's do number 3 together. Starts on a G. That's the root. There's a 3rd. There's a 5th. There's a 7th. Then you look at the quality. Major 3rd, yes. Minor 3rd, yes. Minor 3rd, yes. Which equals the minor 7th there. To double check that, think F to G, major 2nd, so that's a minor 7th. Question? Yes. It is possible. In a minute, I'll show you all of the naturally occurring 7th chords, but the dominant 7th with this specific quality is so common. The major 3rd, minor 3rd, minor 3rd, that's the most common. So it happens so frequently, that's the only one we're really going to study today. There are other types of 7th chords, though, yes. If you wanted to do, let's just do number 16 so we get some bass clef practice, because you guys love bass clef, right? Number 16, you start on an E flat. So that's the root. I'll just go space, 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 space. We have the root, E flat to G, major 3rd, yes. G to B is a major 3rd as well, so we need to adjust it. Now we have B flat to D. Since B to D is a minor third, B flat to D is a major third, but it should be a minor third, so I'm also going to adjust the D to a D flat.